The debate surrounding Marathon has made me very reminiscent of similar coping stories that I've seen already. Dragon Age Veilguard, Concord, Highguard, the list goes on. It's the same story being spun 1,000 times. I never wanted Marathon to fail, I just wish it kind of never existed to begin with, because the resources spent on making this game could have been used to save Bungie's crown jewel in Destiny. Instead, we're left now to pick up the pieces, kind of wondering why this is all happening. It's safe to say now that Marathon might be in a death spiral, and it's happening far faster than anyone really could have anticipated. As of me writing this video, as seen here via the Steam charts, the game sits at 35,000 players. And that Steam chart number is making developers and the industry types very angry that it exists at all. Because now if you care about the health of a new live service game, it's because you're jobless, apparently. Unsurprisingly, PC Gamer came to the defense of Marathon with this article. As the Marathon player count discourse reaches peak stupidity, Warframe and Overwatch devs speak up in solidarity. This is big, unemployed, maidenless behavior. Here's the post that this originated from. So this guy's name is Dylan Snyder. He's a senior game designer at Overwatch. Do not harass him or anything, but I'm not going to claim that seeing Marathon fail makes me happy because it doesn't. The thing is, I would love nothing more than for Bungie to have a win for once, since all they've been taking for years now is loss after loss. Their last big win was the final shape, which was years ago at this point. Since then, Destiny has bled players to such a point that it's getting worrying, and Marathon was kind of meant to be the big comeback for them, but it wasn't, but that was the intention. The crazy part is, however, while sure this Overwatch designer might be shaming people over being obsessed with player counts, it does matter. He knows this well himself. Overwatch 2 was a mistake. Dylan likely can't even deny that, since everything Overwatch did pretty much got changed back to what the original Overwatch originally was anyways. I mean, they even dropped the 2 from the name, making the sequel game's entire premise even more pointless. Not to mention the removal of the promised single-player mode for that game even, which was the entire point is why it was called Overwatch 2 to begin with. The only way Overwatch was actually able to turn things around somewhat was by basically just turning into back what it was before they ruined it with all of those changes they wanted. I get it, alright? Live service games are hard to make, I'm not saying they aren't. But you ask me, I think the entire concept of these games is killing the games industry more than it's helping. And people have a right to be concerned about Marathon because, let's be real, outside of maybe Blizzard, Bungie was kind of the modern blueprint on how to do live service effectively. Everyone tried to make their own Destiny, but they all pretty much failed. Remember Marvel's Avengers by Crystal Dynamics? That was meant to be Marvel Destiny pretty much, and that game, it's dead and erased now. You can't even play it anymore. Nobody remembers Battleborn, and stuff like Outriders is dead and buried at this point too, which kind of sucks because Outriders was fun actually. But I think the trend or fad, if you will, of this style of game is dying. And it's never not been more over than it is right now. I mean, can you even blame the reception? The Metacritic score right now sits at a 5.3 out of 10 right now. The critic score is non-existent because Bungie pleaded to every major publication to wait for their review scores until the Cryo Archive Endgame mode releases, which is halfway into March. Mind you, Marathon came out March 5th. Bungie has effectively swindled the entire gaming press into just waiting half a whole month basically into officially scoring their new game. Tell me which other games have been given that much of a grace period by the press when it came to their reviews. It's almost never. This entire thing stinks of media manipulation. To most reviewers would have scored Marathon by now and then added a second smaller editor note when Cryo Archive officially released. But since this is Bungie, the industry darling I guess, the entire gaming press is instead waiting on their knees. Like, yes Bungie, whatever you need, we're gonna wait, which is honestly kind of ridiculous to me. This is like a new single player game coming out and nobody's scoring it because the developer said, please wait until we release an expansion to the game and also fix all the bugs and then you can score it. Like, no, nobody would do that. Yet here, it's happening. It's insulting also to the paying customer because the gaming press is effectively allowing people to buy games blind without actual official scores because they don't want to ruin their relationship with Bungie as a studio. If you ask me, that's jobless behavior. It proves how much of a cabal-like monolith this gaming press really is these days. Either way, Bungie's new shooter, it's not doing so hot. No amount of victim blaming is really going to change that. And again, not happy about it, but this is what happens when a studio has routinely ruined their relationship with their fan base like this over years. Because a reminder that Bungie was the one who coined the term of not over-delivering to your consumers on purpose. This was coined back in 2022, but as seen here via Forbes, where Bungie was enforcing this mantra of never over-delivering because it will set patterns that will hurt you in the future when delivering content. This article's from 2023, obviously, but it led to this meme-worthy image which Bungie unironically shared via their GDC talk a few years back, when they were talking on Destiny and how they made the game into what it is today. And here, don't even let me tell you, let Justin Truman, who is now, by the way, the head of Bungie these days, here to tell you all about his design philosophy and how Bungie refuses to over-deliver now. So please, watch this clip.
And we still want to do that. We still want to surprise and delight and sometimes even overwhelm our players, but we need to be mindful of the patterns that we're creating, the implied future commitments that we've set for ourselves each time. And this is tough. Like, this is honestly one of the ones that we're still grappling the hardest with, because it's hard to tell a team that has extra cycles and they have energy and they want to do something amazing and they know how to do it. And it totally would be amazing and awesome for the game. Sometimes we have to tell them, like, we shouldn't ship this because it's an over delivery that is going to set us up for failure on future trains. And to paint it in a more positive, more like proactive light, the lesson that we're still learning is that everything we deliver needs to be a blueprint. We need to understand how the blueprint will be repeated and whether or not we can do that repeating sustainably. And if we can't repeat the blueprint, or if we don't want to, we need to make sure that our delivery of that feature or that content sets up player expectations to match ours, that the blueprint is not going to be repeated.
You see, the problem here is that Justin's design philosophy doesn't work. If it did, then Bungie would be in a far better position than it is right now.
And if we can't repeat the blueprint, or if we don't want to,
the final shape was, by all definitions, an over-delivery. It was the end, effectively, of Destiny 2 as a game for most people. It was the culmination of 10 whole years of story content and more coming to a close, where most people walked away afterwards because to them, like me, the story and the motivation of Destiny 2 as a world or a universe was over. Didn't mean that I wouldn't keep playing it, but I needed reasons to keep playing Destiny 2 now that the story was officially done, but Bungie didn't do that. What followed after the final shape was the epitome of under-delivering. Smaller episodic content with drip-fed content meant to keep you coming back week after week like always. I just became numb to the entire idea, and I finally decided it was time to move on from Destiny for good, which is exactly what I did. Didn't mean I wasn't going to check in on what Bungie was doing next with the series, see what the next expansion was going to be like, all to see if maybe what was to come would be worth returning for, but clearly that wasn't what happened. Edge of Fate was met with resoundingly bad disdain from the fan base. Renegades came out as well, and I heard basically nobody talk about it. It just kind of came and went. The under-delivery of Bungie's design philosophy was in full swing. They didn't want you to expect a Forsaken or a Final Shape every year, so they just didn't do that, and the game has faltered because of that. Marathon, after trying it all out, felt like Bungie learned pretty much nothing about what their players really wanted. The entire point of their games that drew people in the first place were the story, the characters, the world, and the cool guns you collected and got to use. Destiny, as a sense as a franchise, made that pattern that defined Bungie into their new era post-Halo. In Marathon, instead, it felt like a hard turn out of the lane that they were known for, making a game where guns are pretty much pointless. Your gear doesn't matter because everything's going to reset anyways. Bungie under-delivered with Marathon. Clearly, you can't deny this, since the response to Marathon has been muted at best. I mean, even go look at Destiny 2 on Steam charts right now as seen here. 1,223 players online playing Destiny 2, with over 300,000 at its peak. That peak was mighty impressive, given that it was back when Steam wasn't as big as a platform. And Bungie, they still had loyal fans who followed them wherever they went. The Bungie now seems uninterested in doing what worked before. Again, I'm not happy about it because I like Destiny. I play Destiny a lot. I mean, not as much as some people, I guess. Like, have you looked at the leaderboard on wastedondestiny.com recently? Like, look at this. The top user, a PlayStation player, has 41,273 hours in Destiny as a whole. Mind you that a full year of time is 8,760 hours. This means that the top played Destiny player has spent almost 5 full years of their life in totality playing just Destiny 1 and 2. Insane, I know. But that's what I mean, right? These are the Bungie diehard hopefuls. Bungie has fans who love them. I used to love them, but like many of you, they just lied to me way too many times, overpromised and underdelivered, and burned me for my money while offering subpar experiences instead. This is a big reason why I waited on Marathon. I wanted to see by community feedback and more if Bungie was actually going to over-deliver again like they used to. Were they going to give people something amazing? And the answer has been very mixed. But the player counts, apparently jobless behavior to look at, tells a different story. The game is not doing super duper well right now. And I mean, according to Destiny superfan Paul Tassi, the main platform for Marathon is actually PC. I'm not even kidding. So Bounding Into Comics made a clip showcasing what Paul Tassi said in a video. So here, watch this.
Having, it was the peak of 88,000 concurrents. Some people are saying, well, we don't know console. I will tell you right now, my Bungie sources have confirmed that this is a primarily played game on PC. Like, that is the main platform for the game.
So if what Paul Tassi is saying is true, which assuming he is, because he does have ties to Bungie, that means if PC is the main platform, then yeah, this is cooked. Because this would mean that the PlayStation player base is somehow then even smaller than what is currently showing on Steam, which is, yeah, not good. One Twitter account tried to claim that there were 500,000 refunds of Marathon on Steam as seen here. That's not why I'm showing you this, because that's not actually true. However, the community note below this post states that based on publicly accessible information, that Marathon actually has somewhere between 290 to 350,000 owners on Steam alone. So that number is currently the closest we've come to quantifying the actual real amount of Marathon players on, again, the so-called main platform from this game, which is apparently on PC. So let's say, hypothetically, if that number is anywhere near true, if so, this means that Marathon might be at 500,000 users or so at max right now in terms of people who possibly bought the game. Maybe it's higher. Either way, that is not high at all for a game of this caliber from Bungie of all people. There's no official way of knowing right now what a Marathon's budget is and how many copies are needed to break even. I saw some people say 7 to 11 million copies to break even, but I personally can't see the 11 at least being real. Let's say if that 7 million sales target was real for the sake of argument here, this would mean at $40 USD, Marathon would make roughly $280 million before taxes and of course splitting it with Steam. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that 7 million could be the number they need, because knowing Bungie and Sony, this game probably costed an arm and a leg to make, not to mention the expensive CGI cinematics that they produced as well, and that's not even including all the crossovers they did with real artists like Poppy and more. So if that is around what they needed, the current player count is pretty worrying. It gets bleak though. I mean, one developer who worked on Warframe as seen here came to the defense of Marathon, where they stated that when Warframe came out, they had 435 other games to compete against. That number has since ballooned to 20,014, which is just kind of ridiculous. I don't necessarily think this Warframe dev meant this as a gotcha, more so to show just how cooked things really are. There's a lot of games, as you know, a lot of live service, not enough people to go between them all, unfortunately. All of these people playing games have things they gotta do. Naturally, they will likely gravitate to maybe one game that works for them, and that's it, because that's all time allows them, and you can't blame them with jobs and families and all the other things you gotta worry about. And Marathon, at least, doesn't seem to be that game for a lot of people, but Warframe is still doing pretty well, even though it's over 10 years old. How is it able to do what it's doing? Warframe, in case you don't know, it's mostly PvE focused, so naturally it means that single players can play it no problem. The same goes with Helldivers, right? It's PvE, not really PvP, unless you shoot your own teammates, I guess. So again, single player kind of users can also easily play that and not really have to worry about anything. Marathon is not that kind of game. It is hardcore PvP. Single players can play it, sure, but they're at a massive disadvantage if they don't have a squad to play with like other people, which then means you need other people to buy in so that you do better at the game, which also means you're gonna need people with similar time frames as you, schedules and more. It is asking a lot. I mean, I guess unless you don't have a job or you're like a streamer, the likelihood then is that that's really gonna be hard to find. I think catering only to PvPers was probably the biggest wash for Bungie here. Amazing that they did it though, considering that their other game, Destiny, kind of lived the way that it did and survived for so long because it too was PvE focused as well. Even the pinnacle content, as they called it, the raids, those were doable because again, it was PvE focused and not PvP. You could actually do it by learning the mechanics of the game. PvP only removes a lot of that away. Some may find that super hardcore and awesome to pursue, but the majority of people, however, do not. The reality is the majority of people who do play PvP games, they usually play those sort of casually. Think Call of Duty or Battlefield, right? But at least in those games, when you get shot, you respawn, your gear is intact, of course, and you keep going. You don't just get knocked back to menu like you do in Marathon. You can't expect casuals to like the idea of losing everything they worked for time and time again, and even when it does work, eventually it doesn't, and the layoffs will come anyways. Like, did you know that this happened recently? Look at this from IGN. EA has laid off an unspecified number of developers from across all of their Battlefield-aligned studios recently. So that's DICE, Motive, Ripple Effect, and Criterion. They all had layoffs. As seen here, those layoffs were apparently to better align EA's Battlefield live service strategy, which reeks of things aren't going well behind the scenes. Battlefield 6 has lost a lot of players, but let's look at that for like a second here, right? Because this pertains to Marathon as a whole as well. In case you didn't know, Battlefield 6 was the best-selling game of 2025. It sold somewhere around 7 million copies in about 3 days of launch, which is, yes, insane by the way, record-breaking actually, higher than any Battlefield before it. Not only did Battlefield 6 outsell Call of Duty Black Ops 7, a feat that most thought impossible, but despite being the biggest and most successful release of 2025 officially, the studios who worked on it are now suffering layoffs exactly 6 months or so after the release of that game. What are we doing if even the biggest game releases can't sustain themselves in the long run? If the only way to make things work is to now shed and bleed talent the moment that these numbers start to dip. If Battlefield 6 is having layoffs, then what is going to happen to Bungie with their numbers currently too? Because they're definitely getting but a fraction of what Battlefield 6 did at release. And there's really no way that Marathon sold 7 million copies in 3 days, because if it did, that Steam player count would be so much more higher than it already is, and Bungie definitely would have posted about it. But this is why I think not only Marathon, but all games like this are in their own death spirals, because most of them are just not sustainable. That is clear as day now. You sell over, what could Battlefield 6's like lifetime sales be at right now? Probably over like 10 million, right? We are talking billion-dollar territory here, guys. And it's still not enough. I think the only way Marathon turns things around is if they honestly go free to play. Listen to the feedback. Change the account wipe mechanics and hope and pray that people buy into the skin bundles and battle passes and whatnot. Because the way that this is going, there might not be a Bungie by the end of this. And even if they hit Sony's expectations, the likelihood is they would still get layoffs anyways. Because this way of making games is way too volatile these days, man. Come on. I think we need to have a serious conversation that the way of making games is like a race to the bottom at this point when it comes to live service stuff. Sure, some of those games will succeed, but the amount of failures is reaching alarming amounts of bodies that are piling up. The reason why I think Marathon even existing is kind of pointless is because it also just divides Bungie's player base even more. So you made a game catered to Destiny's PvPers, but by doing so, you then pulled the PvP players from your Destiny player counts to another game, which in turn means now there's less people in your Destiny game, so you're dividing the player base you have into two smaller groups for what reason exactly, right? Seems like a waste of resources and time to me. This would be like me owning two restaurants across the street from one another, but you can only buy a burger at one place? And sorry, but you gotta go across the street for the fries and the ketchup. Like, what are we doing? There's also just other weird oversights like this from Eurogamer, so you can get Twitch drops for Marathon. These are kits that give you a random gun and such to use in the game. When you redeem it, however, if your inventory is full, the Twitch drop just kind of gets chucked into the void and you lose it. So now people are mad that they're losing their Twitch items. This is all because Marathon has notoriously small inventory for every player on purpose. Again, what are we doing? IGN, even as seen here, has already begun to state that Marathon's quest structure is boring and gets in the way of the rest of the game. This is mostly because the quests called contracts are typical run-of-the-mill things. Go here, press the button, collect this item, extract, you get the idea. They're fetch quests, and in Marathon's case, they are vital to your progress. IGN states here, as you can see, that Marathon's Marathon's quest design even early on tasks you with going to multiple areas. But since every user is going to have their own contracts, especially if you play with randoms, which will be the majority of players like usual, it means now that everyone will need to go somewhere else from where you need to go, which means that most people will just run away from you doing what they needed to do, which now not only reduces your survivability, but makes the act of doing these fetch quests even more tedious. As IGN then says here, some quests have to be done in a single round, so if you miss a step by dying or extracting because your teammates ran away, you have to now redo the whole thing. Combining that with trying to convince randoms to follow you so you don't die is going to be hard enough, not to mention running into all manner of enemies along the way too. And the UI, as IGN says there, is no help either, and they make the point, which is exactly what I said was a problem with Marathon during its server slam, which is that I felt like I was at war with its UI and its map as much as I was with the world as well. Again, what are we doing? Apparently Bungie will fix this eventually, but there's that word again. Eventually. Not now or tomorrow, just eventually. Like everything Bungie does, it always comes down to they will get to it, just not right now. That's been a problem with Bungie for a very long time. Maybe they made things bad on purpose so they can fix them later to be praised as listening. Who knows? But it is wild that after 10 whole years of Destiny, understanding how the UI works and making that a better user experience, it's as if Bungie just forgot what they knew with Destiny when they did Marathon. Now the UI is terrible again, but don't worry, they're gonna fix it eventually. But this is what I'm getting at, right? If the biggest games in the genre, like your Battlefield 6s, are having layoffs, with unspecified amounts of people being let go, how are games like Marathon meant to survive if they can't even reach a fraction of the titans of the multiplayer space, which are failing too? Maybe this all is because Bungie has drilled the concept of don't over-deliver to such a degree that now nobody expects anything from them anymore, and even then what is presented is still disappointing. Marathon might have done better when Bungie still had the goodwill of their user base behind them and they weren't already used to Bungie under-delivering yet over-promising time and time again with their shiny vidocs and, the well-edited trailers and then some. But with the way that things are going, Bungie needed to over-deliver to such a degree with Marathon to win people back this time, and yet they managed to release another game that again didn't have enough at release. And they then decided to also split the user base up, take everything from you every 3 months as well, assuming the game lives that long at this rate. And if you question any of this openly, not even from a toxic standpoint, but just as a rational adult and go, why should I play this like I am? The only response you're going to get from these developers like that Overwatch designer guy saying that you are giving jobless behavior apparently. Does that make you want to play these sorts of games more? Probably less if I'm going to be real. I mean, that just makes me not even want to go play Overwatch either, but this is just how things are now. You are either only seen as a good consumer if you consume the slop given to you while yelling praise all of the time. Otherwise, if you step out of line, you're just jobless and maidenless instead, apparently. Great way to show that you guys care about your consumer base, by the way. Really hope that works out for you in the long run. Ultimately, with Marathon at least, I still don't see a point to any of this, and if PC is their main platform, as Paul Tassi said, it might be cooked. It's all a death spiral either way, from the lost loot, the promise to not over-deliver, and even if you do, you have layoffs anyways. Which just returns me to ask the same question, dear game industry, what are we doing? Let me know what you think, subscribe if you like to, and thanks for being here. Go enjoy a video game, and no, if you question things, it does not make you a loser. It just means you have a rational mind in a sea of irrationality. But anyways, take care of yourselves.